Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 50 of Nutanix Weekly. Jirah was quick to point out that had no relevance from a binary perspective. It's just a bunch of ones and kind of zeros. All right, Jirah, on the spot, what is 50? What's the binary for it?
It's
There's somebody listening right now. Just yell it.
it's something like, yeah, it's like ones. No one wants to hear this, by the way. I was actually about to start going like it's 1001 what? No, that's not what people tune in for.
Let me break out the notepad.
Yeah. I have at least that small shred of self-awareness. Yeah.
And then tell me, if you gave it a 250, no, you gave it a 220 something mask, what would it look like? What would it hand out? All right, there's a lot of people like, what? No,
some might call episode number 50 our golden episode.
Wrong podcast.
half 100. What else?
Yeah.
So I've got with me Jirah Cox, Harvey Green, same guys, been here for the other 49, so I don't need any introductions. Kind of most of the 49 so far, if not all of them, probably all of them. So number 50, we should celebrate, yay. And then we should move on to talking about something. So what are we going to talk about today?
So we found another fantastic post on the community blog around the more enhancements in Files 4.0, this time around a DR focus, right? And what's the experience of using Files with a DR failover? So
I just left a lunch. I'm in Chicago, and I just left a lunch, and the customer was awesome, really nice guy. He just invested in infrastructure with Dell Vertex, or not Vertex, that's the old stuff, Dell VxRail. And he could see my face when he told me. I'm like, oh, well, it's not our blueprint, but we can make it work. Thank you. And when I say that, I can easily point to Files being a great reason why the Nutanix platform, AOS, Acropolis operating system on whatever your hypervisor is, in this case, AHV would be ours, just really makes for a great platform. And the number one complaint of his current user population is slow logins. So you can see my face. I wasn't overly excited about him having new gear that wasn't the gear I would want him to have, but he had something new, and we'll make it work for sure. It just wouldn't be ideal. So the podcast today, we're going to cover the blog by Mike McGee, as Jirah was talking about, Nutanix Files 4.0, new features, smart DR enhancements. Harvey, why does this matter?
Well, it only matters to those of us who thinks DR is important, which hopefully is all of us.
that tragically is some subset of IT buyers by definition.
It really is. And the conversation a while ago was somewhere in the mix of what did you just buy was how many data centers do you have? Well, we just have one. I was like, oh, it's 2022. We got to have more than one. We can't just have one data center, even if one's the cloud or some backup target.
Somebody else's data center. I mean, that still works. That's still better than not having an option.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, they don't have Nutanix Files as a way to simply make that backup location happen, but we'll get them there. Today was meeting number 1.
Yes.
So, can only get better from here. And we can touch on, and some of the why, right? Why would that be interesting to them around, like, what are the other, what are the ways can we give them back time in their day and give them back time in their week and month? So Files, of course, is a fantastic one, right? Where it's native file services right there in the platform that are highly available, highly scalable, highly performant. But then today's focus, right? Easily managed for disaster recovery, right? So if you have it at 2 sites, whether you own both sites, you rent one site, the other site can be, in the cloud, could be at a partner data center, could be a lot of things. Having that data is one thing. Replicating it to make sure you still have it after a site denial event, right, is something else entirely. So
Jirah, I went back and listened to last week's. Now I'm confused. I know Files is file level sharing, right, and storage. Mm-hmm. Is it also block level if I'm using the iSCSI portion of Files?
So Nutanix as a platform offers block storage. We call the feature volumes. And Files uses that, right? So when we deploy Files, part of the automation of the wizard there is it stands up all of the filer heads, if you will, like the front end where SMB connections terminate. And then it also sets up all of the backend block volumes that all the filers then mount. And part of the different failover mechanisms, right, are that different filers can connect to different backend block volumes based on what kind of failure we're routing around.
Mhm. So we should probably start off with the intro here that talks about 3.8, files 3.8, introduced the idea that we could replicate at the share level, which that was probably a big improvement for DR functionality.
Yeah, since the dawn of files, we had the construct of taking the virtual machines that were the front end filers, taking the back end block volumes, wrapping them all in a Nutanix protection domain, which is like our replication group, sending them all to the DR site. And then there was a workflow to say, activate that copy of my file server infrastructure so that it could get re-IP'd, could join Active Directory, brought up all the shares, brought everything back online. And it did all that for you in an automated fashion, but you can imagine that was a fair amount of steps that it had to run through. So then, yeah, so 3.8 brought in what is branded as Smart DR, which is rather than replicate the whole thing at the infrastructure level, right, the backend block volumes and the VMs themselves, run both sides actually in parallel with Smart DR, so that they're already IP'd, already joined to the Active Directory, and then just do share level replication, right? So when a user writes a file with, like in this case, like a 1 minute granularity, replicate that whole share contents over to the other file server, right? So that you're simply activating that share and marking the DR copy as writable is really the main activity for a DR failover.
And I feel like we may have covered this last week. Is there the concept of when you're replicating that over to make it immutable as well?
Not today, I don't believe in for true immutability of like a legal, like a worm stance for that file.
Yeah, that's just out of objects today, right, Jirah?
Today that would be in objects, and part of that would be because when would users expect that, right? Usually that would be like with a backup or an archive type of data set, right? I can think of a number of customers in multiple previous careers that I've had where if like SMB level data could be marked as immutable and like can't be deleted for 7 years, we would have had a very interesting conversation around capacity and forecasting, right? Like, what do you mean I can't delete my, I don't know, personal music library? It's usually the tired old joke.
Oh, yeah, that reminds me of a story for that, where a guy came to my desk one day. I was a support admin, and yelled at me about something and told me I'm an electrical engineer, I'm a lawyer, blah blah blah, and I'm smart enough, I can do whatever I want. And
he knows what 50 is in binary.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But then a couple days later, I'm like, why are my backups so big? And then I found his porn stash. So I didn't hesitate to mention it.
You got some faster backups, sounds like.
Yeah.
Let's see. What were we talking
All
about?
right. Well,
yeah,
all right.
there you go. How you pivot off that, Jirah? Go ahead. Let's see it.
So scalability. Okay. So my comment about immutability does not make sense in the share files conversation, but from a backup perspective and objects, that's where it comes in, and Nutanix has it covered there, right?
Totally.
All right. So in this blog by Mike McGee, he really calls out two things. The first, as files, Smart DR has gotten better. Number one, scalability. Jirah, what's Nutanix really highlighting as an improvement in the scalability as it relates to files and the DR?
Yeah, so a major enhancement here to Smart DR itself, raising the limit of what used to be 25 shares that could be protected with Smart DR, now up to 100. So the first 25 can do the 1 minute replication intervals, and then the next 75 or from 26 up to 100 can do 10-minute intervals, right? So still very, very rapid protection for the data that you write to those shares.
So is this intended to be like application level replication of the file? So that if you're using an application, a client server app, the server piece is accessing those files for some reason, and it's real time, or we expect those server apps to be, hitting the same file share. It's just the replication's happening in case you needed the redundancy.
I think it's fair to say it's it depends on the application, right? And where does the business expect to solve the problem, right? If it's an app that we control, that we write, that we need, like a zero tolerance for, then of course we can simply write to 2 shares, one at site A, one at site B, and we control all of that. If it's an app that maybe we purchase, we buy, we only, we just stand it up, we don't control a lot of it at the code level, then we have to protect it at the infrastructure level. And so it writes to share at site A, and we replicate that share over to site B, right? In this case, we can mark it as a high priority share, one of the first 25 there that can do a 1-minute replication interval.
Mhm. So are you saying the ability to write real time is within Nutanix or within the application itself that you're working with?
If we needed like true synchronous, right, then I would write that at the application level, right, to say, send out, parallel writes to share A and share B, and wait for both to respond back before I, at the application level, proceed with my next transaction, right, if that was a requirement.
I think we lost it, Andy.
I was about to ask if that makes sense, which is my usual kind of go-to for dead air on a call.
No, I mean, that makes sense, at least to me.
Yeah,
and
so
I'm sure that there will be plenty of people who use functionality like this to cover for an app that doesn't have that capability, but still will write to a share, and then they're using that 1-minute interval to replicate it out to a different one.
Yeah, right. We can offer the business still dramatic data protection for the shared data as it gets written, and we can also protect a lot more shares. 4x the limit of shares that we had before. So like our precious like IT installs shared directory, right, or IT ISOs. Important data, but doesn't change quite as fast, right? Put that
That's
in that
totally important. It's like
it's
the most
totally important,
share
100%. But we
there
put it in that
is.
10-minute interval window.
It's the one that we use, maybe once every couple months, but we need it when we need it, right?
100%, 100%. So then the second enhancement here that Mike highlights right on this blog post is around self-service restore functionality. So self-service restore in the context of files, right, refers to the ability for like a certain file share, like say the accounting share or the IT installer data share for like our distribution point for installers, for an end user to sort of go back in time and say, oops, I deleted my Excel file or a text file or whatever we deleted, and self-service restore that, right? Usually through Windows, that means like the Windows previous version tab in Windows Explorer, or like a .snapshot directory on Linux. But that ability to say, what was here like an hour ago or 2 hours ago, and pull that data back without even having to go bug anybody in IT or log a ticket. So like it says, self-service restore of data. And Files, this is also something Files has had basically since it launched, and then we've brought that forward to now interoperate with the new Smart DR functionality, so that we can use Smart DR to replicate the data, but then now still have the ability to self-service, from across both sides of that share, or even have differing retention, right? Like the article calls out, maybe at prod we have the last 2 hours, like an hour ago and 2 hours ago state of the file share, but maybe at DR we have the last 10 hours of 10 hourly snapshots, right? So those can mix and match, or they can match, they can differ, or they can match across their application, so that when you do a failover, users can still self-service their own restores.
Right. And I mean, that's a very, very important technology. I've always been, I don't know, kind of on the fence as to whether or not you always want that to be out for people no matter what, because when you give them the undo button, they'll press it, which is great. But when they go, 5, 6 revisions, and then they want to undo, and then they're undoing something else they shouldn't undo, it just a tangled web we weave sometimes.
No, that's fair. Yeah, it's there's some power to it, right? Which means you can use it well or use it badly.
Are you guys talking about Microsoft's shadow snapshots again?
We're just talking about that power as a whole, to be able as a user to go back to the way that it was before. I don't know. I guess sometimes that can be a training issue where you train them that they have the power, but you don't necessarily train them that that power has both limits and consequences sometimes.
So did
Yeah.
you guys ever implement this back in the Microsoft days when they made that available in the file
Oh
system?
yeah.
You did?
Oh,
We got the scars to prove it.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I ever actually had it run, live or not. But I guess in this case, and I'm sorry I disappeared for a minute. I'm at a hotel and I got disconnected.
You're
What we're
fine.
talking about here is the ability to self-service your
Self-service
request.
recovery.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Restore the contents of a file share, or like even a directory or single file back to an earlier point in time, right? To like recover from like a unintentional deletion or overwrite or a bad save. So
I'm bad because as you're talking about that, you talked about restoring the folder or restoring the share, and I'm like, ugh. I'm fine with them restoring a file, right? They go to store again, not necessarily you're teaching them to have the power, but sometimes you forget to teach them it has consequences if they're restoring an entire share or an entire folder.
I mean, we're crossing the line of like technology problem into like human problem, right? And those interact a lot. When I think back to my days as like the IT guy, or you have those handful of favorite users, right? That are like your sort of like
Right.
trusted folks in a department. Maybe you teach them about how to do this, right? Because it's something you can control and configure. You can enable it at a share per share level, right? So maybe it's not for all shares, and of course, blah blah blah, RBAC and least possible privilege, and users should only see files that they absolutely have to see to do their job, right? Hello ransomware and limitation of blast radius there, but in general, it's something, at least if I was a technology evaluator, I'd want to see that the capability existed in the software. Where I chose to use it can be very, very tactical, right? So I think you're totally right there, Harvey.
Can you control this per user, per group, or if it's on, everybody can do it? If it's not on, of course, nobody can do it.
I know that turning it on or off is a per share level. And now I'm going to make a guess. I don't like to do that, but I think anybody that would have a write privilege, right, it'd be a read action on the previous state, and you're writing it to the current state. So anybody with write privileges probably would be able to see that, right? Same way that anybody with a write access could overwrite data from their application in the first place.
Yeah. Yep. Have to have a certain level of trust that things will happen the way they're supposed
to. Harvey, you're probably closer to this than I am. Couldn't there be a group policy control to like hide the previous version tab for certain users? Since that's
yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. So that's your yes there, Andy, right? Anybody that you didn't want to do this, they technically have rights on the file server, but we can hide it in the GUI so that they never see it.
Well, that sounds like a good idea.
As always, use your best judgment.
Yes.
Assuming your GPOs are processing, which they should be, but
oh my,
we have environments where it was a disaster.
I mean, if they're not, call Harvey.
Hey, there we go.
Harvey will tear down your entire Active Directory and build it back up from that.
No, I will not. No.
I'm sure we probably all troll the same sysadmin forums. Did you guys see the post today about the guy who seemed sort of like a junior AD admin, kind of crying out for help, saying, "I'm getting an error that I can't add this user to more than 1,000 AD groups. That's the limit."
Yeah.
And it's
wow to that, and good for you for thinking that I could read a post that happened today.
I love all the responses that are just like, if you have a user in 1,000 groups, you have other problems, right?
Yes. Yes.
Don't fight this limit. It's probably there for your protection. Let's go ask other creative questions about solving this problem.
Poor guy had an honest question. He probably got flamed.
I mean, it's part of the maturation process of a sysadmin.
It is. Yes.
Well, he probably inherited that.
Yes.
That is also true.
Yeah.
But
also part of the maturation process of a sysadmin.
Yes, that is true too. If you're that far in and you're having that, I still think it's right to let's look at fixing the other
I,
problem.
I still get to say call Harvey. So
Well, I may have
There you go.
told this story before, but when I was at Microsoft doing AD support, I remember the guy calling in. His domain controllers were SpongeBob and Sandy and Patrick, and he's talking to me as if I'm supposed to know what he's talking about. I had no idea this is early on, and I didn't keep up with Nickelodeon at the time. I didn't quite get it at the time because my kids were young. I'm like, I should know this. He goes, no, it's for adults. I'm like, it's a cartoon for adults. Like, yeah. It's like, oh, okay, all right. That was a long time ago. All right. Well, Harvey, is there anything else about Nutanix and its ability to replicate and provide DR snapshots that you would like to also call out, or are we done here?
I think we're done here. I guess I'll throw out, since you threw the torch to me, that we have our next iteration of the Nutanix workshop, AOS and AHV, that takes place this Friday, whatever date that is. Let me look. Friday at 1 p.m. We've got a later start so that we can integrate more of our West Coast customers who don't necessarily want to get up at 6 or 7 in the morning. That'll be the 22nd, April 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern,
Awesome.
10
I know you
p.m.,
guys are
10 a.m. Western.
having good success teaching people, enabling people to that. Jirah,
Yes.
anything about files specifically on this part of the conversation you'd want to bring up?
this covers it for me. Anybody can take a test drive of this, of course, in the test drive environment, or also try it on your existing clusters as well. So it's a one-click deployment from your existing Prism dashboard to say deploy files, kick the tires on it. Harvey, for Friday, is there anywhere people need to go to register for that? Will they maybe find a link in show notes?
Yes, that is on the XenTegra.com page. You can go there to sign up for it. We'll stick a link when we post this out as well.
We will.
Good deal.
We will. We will.
XenTegra.com. That's where you go for that. Because I appreciate it. Jirah, let me do this to you. Any interesting customers out there that, without calling them out by name, that you see using files and in such a way that's unique from others?
All over the place. It's by far it's a no-brainer for any UC environment, right? So if you're running any kind of virtual desktops, server-based desktops on Nutanix, files is by far the easiest answer. Like we kind of opened with, right? Customers suffering from long login times. There's so much in that chain, right? I need to have responsive domain controllers. I need to have responsive profile storage directories, and my desktops need to be fast. And Nutanix solves all those problems super, super well. So for EUC, right? Like I said, no brainer. But then also, general purpose, GenPop file shares, right? My departmental shares, my end user private directories, all a slam dunk use case for that. But then also even scaling out to like backups and stuff. So if I need just SMB based or NFS based backup targets, that's also easy as well. The cool thing about a software defined solution is it can run on any kind of hardware that we need it to, right? So if it's tiny all flash nodes burning VDI, that's fine. Those profiles probably aren't very large anyway. If it's backup nodes and that's slow and fast and I want cheap and deep, that's fine. Software runs great on hybrid nodes, right? That are mostly made up of like HDD based spinning disk storage as well.
Cool. Yeah, very fungible, very flexible, and also great for specific workloads like the VDI profile, FS Logic's world, which, believe it or not, still the number one complaint we hear when we walk into a new client is slow logins.
Yes. Yes. There are tools to fix that.
Yeah.
Can't what is it? Can't improve what you don't measure. So
yes,
there you
that's
go.
very true.
Got to start somewhere.
A lot of them quit measuring. They just assume it's going to be slow, and it doesn't
Tolerate.
have to be. And they're loading.
That would be like the flip side, right? Things you tolerate don't get better on their own.
Well, users just stop. I think users just stop complaining. That's a lot of what happens.
Yeah. I mean, if you are used to, I log in, I go get coffee, I come back and everything's up, and that takes 5 minutes, then you go log in, it's in 30 seconds, but you still go get your coffee and come back to user. That's still the same.
Right.
But to your point, if you're measuring that, if your user actually cares about it, they're sitting at their desk and waiting on that machine or that VM or that file share or whatever it is to come up. And 30 seconds versus 2 minutes is a huge difference.
Well,
If you
and
can get it below 30 seconds, then that's even better.
yeah, I think that's so interesting in the context of like, well, 2022, right? Where employees are never more mobile than before, right? People
Right.
feel empowered to job hop, and nobody solves this problem in isolation. But what is IT and what is the company more broadly thinking about in terms of like using technology to actually delight our internal customers, right? Our employees. And if that's not on someone's radar, that's probably a competitive disadvantage as an employer in terms of like retaining a workforce, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's absolutely something that can be a focus area that honestly isn't that hard to meaningfully impact. But what you're talking about the device that someone's going to interact with, let's say 8 hours a day, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, maybe a lot more,
Right.
you know, and that's an opportunity for delight, right? Like I can think of all the apps that I can go to like an app store and through good automation, TM, you know, get like apps deployed to my workspace, right? That make it easier for me to do my job. And that gives me as an end user delight. You know, compared to if I had to throw in tickets and wait for slow desktops and wait weeks for, you know, the tools I needed to get installed, you know, that's a competitive disadvantage.
Yeah. And at this point, we all need to find every way we can to get people to want to come work and stay working employed there.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I will let you go. Thanks for another great conversation.
Thank you both.
Yeah, absolutely.
See you.